So for example, if the prompt mentions something about the Cold War, you should be thinking of things like proxy wars, such as the Korean or Vietnam War. You should also be thinking about things like the space race, the Bay of Pigs invasion, and what that showed for JFK and the rest of America at the time. Once you thought of almost all the relevant historical events and their significance, you should be choosing which ones would be best for you to talk about. Something that you obviously remember the most about, but something that is directly related to what you're talking about in response to the prompt. In your pre-writing step, you should be pairing each event with another as a reminder of which event you're going to talk about and how. So going back to the Cold War example, I could choose the Korean War as one example. I'm Korean, and this is a topic I know a lot about, and that is related with the Cold War in general. Well, okay, I want to use the Korean War and another event to prove my point that countries aided financial and military help in order to become a world power. Well, should I pair the Korean War to the Bay of Pigs invasion? No, not really. I mean, here's the thing. The Bay of Pigs invasion was it was an event planned out by the CIA and John F. Kennedy, and it was their attempt to overthrow the Cuban communist leader Fidel Castro. The US was basically paranoid at the time about just communism as a whole. It's called the Cold War for a reason. But they were especially paranoid because Cuba was very close to Florida. And the US in general, they were terrified of the idea of communism spreading to capitalist America. That's, in a general sense, what the Bay of Pigs invasion was about. The Korean War, on the other hand, was a financial, political, and military aid from the US to Korea. The US offered assistance to combat the North Koreans, which were communists, and yeah, they still are, using it as a chance to gain another ally against the Soviets. So, do you see what I mean? The Korean War and the Bay of Pigs invasion are loosely related, actually, when it comes to proving my point. Rather, talking about the financial aid behind the Korean War and the financial aid behind the rise of communist China would be a little bit more relevant in proving my point. And the reason why is because, by using these two examples, I could talk about how Korea started to grow financially after receiving help from the US, and how Korea adopted similar constitutions, laws, and economic models that the US had. Meanwhile, I could compare this to communist China, which around the early 1950s and late 1940s was gaining a boost in its economy due to the iron and steel industry, as well as radical leaders such as Mao Zedong, who also adopted similar behaviors and similar laws to Soviet Russia, initially set up by Lenin. And so obviously, I would need to be a lot more detailed and complex with this example to truly get full points on a LEQ if I was actually taking the test. But my point is, just be complex and direct. Make sure that your information is tightly connected with each other, not just loosely connected under one general historical event. No, make sure that they have a tight common ground, or they have a commonality in the sense of their differences, what makes them different. And therefore, it makes it easier for you to compare. You should also be addressing multiple perspectives or different time periods with similar historical context if you can. And that's basically how you use historical reasoning and how you analyze different historical events for the LEQ. Good luck with practicing, and I'll see you next time.